Your wife caused her own fall.
Your son caused your downfall.
She blocked my path before I even reached Emily. Marjorie Keaton planted herself in the center of the narrow sidewalk, arms crossed, chin lifted like she owned every inch of concrete beneath our feet. Your wife caused a disturbance, the board chair snapped, her voice sharp enough to slice through the cold morning air. My wife was still on the ground, one hand braced against her belly, breath shaking from the impact of the shove. And Marjorie didn't even look at her. She just tilted her head, waiting for me to bow the way neighbors usually did when the enforcer in crimson decided they were out of line. You're filing a violation, she continued, for obstructing a community walkway during peak hours. I stared at her, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Your son shoved my pregnant wife off this sidewalk. The clipboard queen scoffed, an ugly, dismissive sound. She startled him, that happens. And there it was, the injustice, the dismissal, the twisting of blame that lit something old and broken in my chest. I stepped closer, my voice low. I reconstruct accident scenes for a living. I know exactly how much force he used. The tyrant in heels blinked, the confidence in her expression faltering for the first time. She hadn't expected that. None of them had. The officer of rules tightened her grip on her tablet, suddenly unsure of whatever lie she'd been prepared to type. If you've ever felt that rush of fire in your chest when someone tries to break your family, pay attention, and hit subscribe now. I could feel the rage rising in me, but even through it, something steadier pulsed, something colder. The reversal they'd never see coming. Marjorie, I said, your son didn't shove just anyone. She rolled her eyes. Oh, spare me, your wife tripped. She's pregnant, I snapped, and you picked the wrong family. The enforcer in crimson raised an eyebrow. Or what? You'll whine louder than the others? I don't have to, I said. My brother is the sheriff's chief. They froze, all four. For a second that stretched like a fault line beneath their polished shoes and brittle authority. Marjorie's lips parted, but nothing came out. The clipboard queen's eyes widened. The tyrant in heels shifted back a full step. Even the officer of rules looked like her tablet had just turned to dust. If you've ever stood up to a bully and felt your spine finally align, I murmured, stay with me and tell me, where are you watching from? For a heartbeat, the walkway went silent. Then Marjorie laughed, a sharp, panicked bark dressed up as confidence. Your brother doesn't control the HOA, she sneered, brushing imaginary dust off her blazer like she hadn't just flinched. And he won't interfere with community governance. I crouched beside Emily, helping her sit fully upright. The scrape on her knee was already swelling. Her breath trembled as she whispered, I'm okay, I think. No, she wasn't. And neither was I. The board chair tapped her clipboard like a judge preparing a sentence. Expect a citation for reckless conduct and misuse of community space. I stood, the heat behind my ribs turning into something sharper. You're issuing her a violation? After your son shoved her hard enough to make her hit the ground? The enforcer in crimson folded her arms, trying to regain control. He's a minor, and she shouldn't have been in his way. Emily's voice broke. I was walking. And blocking the lane, the clipboard queen added, scribbling furiously. Sidewalk usage policies clearly state, they state nothing that excuses assault, I said. But Marjorie wasn't listening. She waved her assistants off and leaned toward me, the tyrant in heels trying to loom taller than the truth. You're new here, Grant. You don't understand how Hawthorne Ridge works. I understand perfectly, I said. You rule through fear. Her smile was razor thin. And you're about to learn what happens when someone challenges me. She didn't realize it yet, but this was the moment she lost everything. Because I'd already made the decision that would bring the sheriff's chief and the entire county straight to her front door. The sidewalk confrontation hadn't even settled in my bones before Marjorie Keaton launched her next attack. By the time I helped Emily into the car and circled back toward our driveway, the board chair was already marching across the cul-de-sac, with two of her officers trailing her like anxious shadows. The enforcer in crimson clutched a fresh stack of violation slips, flipping through them as if she were preparing for a courtroom scene. The clipboard queen followed with her pen uncapped, ready to weaponize every stroke of ink. The tyrant in heels walked with tight, angry steps, each click echoing her irritation. And the officer of rules scanned her tablet like she was loading ammunition. "You'll need to address these immediately," Marjorie Keaton announced, snapping one slip against my chest before I even reached the porch. Emily, still shaken, stood behind me holding onto her stomach. I could feel her trembling through my shirt. "You can't be serious," I said, my voice low. "This community follows standards," the board chair replied, chin lifted. "And you violated several this morning." The gall, the absolute audacity. "What violations?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would be fiction. "Failure to control domestic activity," she declared. "Walking," I said. "You mean she was walking?" The enforcer in crimson pursed her lips. "And obstructing a shared pathway during high traffic hours." "It's 8:30, I snapped. "Kids aren't even out yet." The clipboard queen scribbled notes like she was documenting a war crime. The tyrant in heels tapped her foot faster. The officer of rules muttered, "Document the non-compliance." Emily's breathing hitched behind me, soft but sharp. Her voice trembled when she whispered, "Grant, please, don't let them do this." I placed my hand over hers. "They won't." Marjorie Keaton smirked, mistaking my calm for surrender. "I'll also need a written statement accepting liability for the stumble and confirming your wife's condition isn't at risk of future incidents." I stepped forward. "You shoved a pregnant woman into the dirt through your son." Her posture stiffened. The board chair didn't like hearing truth out loud. The enforcer in crimson flashed her a nervous glance. The clipboard queen paused her writing. The tyrant in heels shifted uneasily. Even the officer of rules hesitated over her tablet. "You will not assign blame to Dylan," Marjorie said sharply. "He was frightened." "He laughed," I said flatly. "You saw it. Everyone saw it." The board chair's jaw tightened. "Misinterpreted behavior." "You misinterpreted gravity," I said. "She fell because he pushed her." "You can drop the dramatics," the enforcer in crimson added, though her voice lacked conviction. Emily's hand squeezed mine. She whispered, "She doesn't care, Grant." "No," I said softly. "She doesn't." Marjorie Keaton stepped closer. "If you continue disrespecting this board, I'll have no choice but to file for community disruption citations." "And if you keep threatening pregnant residents," I said, "I'll have no choice but to bring in the sheriff's office." That sentence hit the group like a hammer. The clipboard queen froze mid-scribble. The tyrant in heels stopped tapping. The officer of rules lowered her tablet slowly. The enforcer in crimson studied Marjorie's face, waiting for permission to panic. Marjorie's voice cracked just a little. "Your brother's title doesn't override HOA governance." "No," I replied, "but it does override criminal negligence." Her pupils tightened. She masked it with a scoff, but I saw the crack, small, hairline, but spreading. "You're bluffing," she muttered. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My silence was a confirmation she couldn't ignore. The tyrant in heels whispered, "Marjorie, maybe let this one—" "No," the board chair snapped. "They will learn that rules keep this place running." Emily winced, gripping her belly again. I stepped closer to her. "She needs rest," I said. "We're done here." "You're done when I say you're done," Marjorie Keaton fired back. Her mistake, because the more she talked, the more she revealed exactly how deep her abuse ran. As I guided Emily inside, I could hear them murmuring behind us, panic threading their voices. The enforcer in crimson whispered, "What if he really calls the sheriff?" The clipboard queen stammered, We didn't see anything, right?" The tyrant in heels muttered, "He's not bluffing." The officer of rules said, "We need to prepare documentation." And Marjorie Keaton, bitter and trembling, hissed, "I'm not afraid of him." She should have been. Because in that moment, as I closed the door behind us, I knew this wasn't just an HOA fight anymore. This was the beginning of the collapse she'd built with her own hands. The moment I closed the front door behind us, I felt Emily sag against my shoulder. She wasn't crying. She was too shocked for that. But the way her fingers curled into my sleeve told me the fall had shaken her deeper than she wanted to admit. I guided her to the couch, helped her ease down carefully, and checked her breathing, her pulse, the tension in her muscles. She whispered she was fine, but I knew fear when I saw it, and I knew what it could do to a pregnant woman's nervous system. Before I could say anything, a soft shuffle sounded near the open window. I stiffened, Emily squeezed my hand. "She's still out there?" she whispered. "Not her, them." Through the blinds, I could see the cluster of HOA officials lingering like a storm cloud, refusing to move on. Marjorie Keaton stood in the center, arms crossed, still barking instructions. The board chair wore her authority like armor, but her eyes darted restlessly, scanning doors, windows, witnesses. The enforcer in crimson kept glancing back toward my house, as if expecting the sheriff's office to materialize at any moment. The clipboard queen clutched her binder to her chest, fingers tapping nervously. The tyrant in heels fidgeted with her hair, her confidence visibly unraveling. And the officer of rules paced with her tablet open, her hands trembling each time she tried typing something. But one figure stood apart, barely visible at the edge of the group: Lena Rowe, the conflicted witness. She hugged her notebook to her chest like a shield, her posture tight, her shoulders rounded inward. She wasn't standing with the others. She was hovering, trapped between duty and conscience. Her eyes kept flicking toward our door, then away, then back again. Every time Marjorie Keaton glanced at her, Lena flinched, shrinking into herself like she expected to be scolded for breathing. Emily noticed it too. "Is that Lena?" she whispered. "Yeah," I said quietly. She saw everything. Emily swallowed. "Do you think she'll say something?" I watched the way Lena's foot shifted restlessly, the way her fingers kept worrying the edge of her notepad, the way she kept opening her mouth like she wanted to speak, but couldn't. Her fear was visible in every line of her body. Fear of retaliation, fear of Marjorie, fear of the board chair's wrath, fear that telling the truth could cost her the fragile safety she clung to. "She wants to," I said. "But wanting and doing aren't the same." Emily's hand drifted to her belly. Her voice trembled. "She saw me fall." "I know." More shifting, more murmuring outside. The enforcer in crimson stepped closer to Marjorie, whispering urgently. The clipboard queen muttered something that made the tyrant in heels shake her head rapidly. The officer of rules hovered behind them, chewing her lip like she was calculating odds. It was chaos disguised as order, panic confined to matching HOA blazers. But Lena. She was taking small, tentative steps away from them. Not toward us, not toward safety. Just away. She wrapped her arms around herself, staring at the sidewalk, the exact patch of concrete where Emily had fallen. Her chest rose and fell in trembling waves. She rubbed her wrist as if reminding herself she still existed. "Grant," Emily whispered. "She looks terrified." "She is." Because Lena had seen the truth. She had watched a pregnant woman get shoved by an HOA president's son. She had watched Marjorie twist reality into something cruel. She had watched the board's machinery try to erase the incident before it could even be processed. And she knew, deep down, that silence made her complicit. But fear was a powerful leash. A sudden sharp voice cut across the group. Marjorie Keaton snapped her fingers at Lena. "Don't wander. We need your statement aligned." Aligned, not honest, aligned. Lena flinched so hard her notepad almost slipped from her grasp. She nodded quickly, eyes down, shrinking back into the formation. Emily's voice cracked. "Oh my God, she's scared of her." "They all are," I said. "But Lena's the only one who hates being part of it. Because she had something the others didn't, a conscience that wouldn't let her sleep." The officer of rules approached Marjorie with a hushed whisper, her eyes darting nervously toward our house. The clipboard queen looked ready to bolt. The tyrant in heels glanced up and down the street, checking for witnesses. Even the enforcer in crimson had her arms folded tightly, shoulders tense. But the board chair? Marjorie Keaton stood rigid, jaw clenched, fury contained beneath a polished exterior as thin as glass. She still believed she could control this. She still believed Lena would obey. She still believed Emily's fall would be erased. But I'd seen the trembling in Lena's hands. The truth was fighting its way out. It was just a matter of when she'd finally break free of Marjorie's hold. And when she did, everything would crack wide open. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's hands gripping the edge of the sidewalk, her breath catching from the fall, the way Marjorie Keaton dismissed her pain like she was swatting a fly. By morning, the shock had turned into something sharper, resolve. Emily needed rest, but I needed answers. The neighborhood felt unusually silent as I stepped outside. The sunlight hit the pavement in harsh streaks, almost like it remembered yesterday's violence. And there, as if waiting to ambush the day, stood the board chair herself, arms folded, chin high, a self-satisfied smirk plastered on her face. She was flanked by the clipboard queen and the officer of rules, who looked like they hadn't slept either. "Grant," she called out, voice falsely polite. "We need to finalize the report." I stopped on the porch, jaw tightening. "The report? You mean the fabricated version where Emily tripped over her own feet?" Her smile thinned. "It's the version that won't put your wife in legal trouble for obstructing community flow." My hands curled into fists. She was shoved. The enforcer in crimson, who'd been pretending to check something on her tablet, chimed in with a stiff tone. "There's no proof of that." Except there was, and they knew it. The tyrant in heels stepped forward next, her voice clipped. "Your wife was warned before. Sidewalks must remain clear for community safety. She cannot expect exceptions just because she's pregnant," I cut in, stunned by her coldness. "Is that what you're trying to spit out?" She swallowed, eyes darting to Marjorie Keaton for guidance. The board chair shot her a glare, before turning back to me with a rehearsed expression of professional calm. "Emotional reactions won't help your situation, Mr. Dalton. We operate by policies. If your wife violated one, it will be documented accordingly." The clipboard queen nodded rigidly, clutching her binder like a battle shield. "We need your statement by noon." "No," I said simply. Silence snapped through them like a whip. The officer of rules blinked. "No?" "That's right, no." I stepped off the porch. "There will be no statement. There will be no falsified report. And there will be no intimidation." The group stiffened, but it was Marjorie Keaton whose composure cracked first. Her jaw twitched, her eyes narrowing into dagger slits. "You don't seem to understand how this works," she hissed. "I understand it perfectly." I walked closer, stopping just a few feet away. The tension thickened. The clipboard queen subtly stepped back. The enforcer in crimson shifted uneasily. The tyrant in heels tapped one foot, unable to hide her anxiety. The officer of rules busied herself with her tablet, though her hands trembled. But Lena wasn't with them today, which meant they were spiraling without their timid witness to puppet. "I'm not playing your version of events," I continued, "and you're not pinning anything on my wife." The board chair finally snapped. "Your wife endangered our community, and your refusal to comply—" "Endangered?" My voice rose before I could stop it. "She was assaulted." "That boy bumped her," she retorted. "Accidents happen." "He shoved her," I said, voice low, icy. "And you stood there watching." The clipboard queen looked away. The officer of rules swallowed. Even the enforcer in crimson shifted her stance, like the ground beneath her was softening, but the board chair stayed rigid, eyes locked onto me, with a familiar hatred I'd seen in people desperate to keep control. "You're digging yourself into a deeper hole," she warned. "Funny," I said. "That's what I was thinking about you." The tyrant in heels gasped softly, like she knew a line had just been crossed. Before anyone could respond, a car turned into the cul-de-sac. All heads swiveled. The enforcer in crimson squinted. The clipboard queen tightened her grip, and the officer of rules froze entirely. Because the car didn't belong to a neighbor. It belonged to the sheriff's department. Panic rippled through the group. The clipboard queen whispered frantically. The tyrant in heels nearly tripped, stepping backward. The officer of rules couldn't hide her fear. Even the enforcer in crimson wavered. But Marjorie Keaton? Her face went pale, then rigid, because she knew exactly who it was. My brother, the sheriff's chief. And he wasn't here to chat. The moment my brother stepped out of that sheriff's vehicle, the entire cul-de-sac shifted. Even the air felt different, tighter, heavier, charged like a storm building pressure in its lungs. But this wasn't his battle. Not yet. He hadn't reached us before she reacted. The board chair straightened her blazer so sharply it looked like she might tear the seams. "Chief Dalton," she called out with a brittle smile, "we weren't expecting outside involvement." My brother didn't even blink at her. "Where's Emily?" he asked me, eyes cold steel. "Is she all right?" "She's inside, resting," I said. "She's shaken and she's bruised." A shadow crossed his face, brief but unmistakable. That was when the clipboard queen panicked. We We have an internal report about that. It's being handled. No, it's being buried, I said. The officer of rules stiffened. The enforcer in crimson looked like she wanted to vanish behind her tablet. But none of them moved. They were waiting for their leader. Always their leader. And Marjorie Keaton, sensing her crew fracturing, stepped forward like a general marching into the last hill she believed she controlled. "Grant, your wife violated HOA protocols," she said, voice clipped. "This isn't a criminal matter. This is community regulation." My brother cut in. "You shoved a pregnant woman?" Her jaw locked. The clipboard queen gasped softly. The tyrant in heels glanced away. The enforcer in crimson swallowed. "I did no such thing," the board chair declared. "She tripped." "She didn't trip," I said quietly. "Your son pushed her." The sidewalk felt hotter beneath us. Even the birds had stopped making noise. My brother's gaze darkened. "Where's the boy?" "He's at school, where he belongs," the officer of rules blurted. Probably rehearsed, probably instructed. But my attention shifted, not because of her words, but because of what I saw on the corner house porch. Lena, the conflicted witness. The young neighbor who watched everything yesterday, frozen, gripping her railing like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She wasn't ready yet, but something in her face, fear, guilt, conflict, was a discovery in itself, because she wasn't just scared of them anymore. She was scared of what staying silent might cost. My brother noticed her too. His eyes flicked to me. "You see it? Yeah, I see it." But this part wasn't about her confession. Not yet. This part was about my discovery. And it came faster than I expected. When the clipboard queen nervously shifted her binder, a set of yellow highlighted pages slipped out and hit the pavement. My brother picked them up before anyone else could. The tyrant in heels lunged for them, but too late. He glanced over the papers once, then twice. His lip curled. "Grant," he muttered. "Do you know what this is?" I shook my head. He lifted the pages for me to see. It was a violation draft. Filed before Emily was even shoved. Dated the morning of the incident. The officer of rules looked ready to faint. The enforcer in crimson closed her eyes, mortified. The clipboard queen froze as if turned to stone. The tyrant in heels whispered a soft, horrified, "Oh no." But Marjorie Keaton? She didn't flinch. She stepped closer, voice low, vicious, and dripping with entitlement. "We pre-prepare forms in case of behavioral issues." "No," my brother said. "You pre-prepare narratives." A tremor ran through the officer of rules. The clipboard queen's breathing hitched. The enforcer in crimson actually took a step back. I stared at the board chair, disbelief simmering into fire. "You planned to accuse her before anything happened?" "You people are unpredictable," she snapped. "You people." My brother moved like he might grab her, but I raised a hand. "No, not yet." I had something else to uncover, because tucked into the back of that premature violation form was something that made my stomach sink. It wasn't just the date. It wasn't just the accusation. It was the attached note, scribbled in rushed handwriting. "Make sure the footage stays sealed, no neighbor statements." That was the discovery I needed. That was the thread that would unravel her throne. The board chair noticed my expression and realized I'd seen it. Her mask slipped. "Stay out of this," she snarled. "I'm already in it," I said. "And you just gave me exactly what I needed." Her face didn't just pale, it broke. The note in my hand felt heavier than paper should. It wasn't just a scribbled instruction. It was confirmation that Marjorie Keaton had planned every inch of this cover-up before my wife even touched the sidewalk. My brother folded his arms, watching the board chair like he'd spent his entire career waiting for someone exactly like her. "Grant," he said quietly, "this isn't just misconduct. This is intent." And that single word, intent, made the clipboard queen flinch so hard she nearly dropped her binder again. The officer of rules shifted her weight from one heel to another, eyes darting like she wanted to run but didn't know where. The enforcer in crimson swallowed hard, pretending she knew nothing. The tyrant in heels looked like she'd aged 10 years since my brother arrived. But Marjorie Keaton, she didn't retreat. She doubled down. "You're misinterpreting internal planning procedures," she said crisply, tapping her heel against the pavement like a judge's gavel. "We document possible behavioral incidents in advance." Possible incidents, I echoed, before they happen. That's called preparedness, the board chair shot back. No, my brother said. That's called premeditation. The clipboard queen gasped. The officer of rules froze. The enforcer in crimson went sheet white. I could feel something shifting, not externally, but inside me. A line I hadn't wanted to cross, because once you take the step from anger into action, you can't go backward. This wasn't about HOA nonsense anymore. It wasn't even just about Emily. It was about who these people were when they thought no one was watching. I held up the note again. You wanted the footage sealed. Why? Marjorie's jaw worked, fighting for a lie she thought she could sell. Because you can't rely on cameras. They distort perspective. Perspective doesn't shove my pregnant wife, I said. The tyrant in heels exhaled a shaky breath. The clipboard queen looked like she might start crying. Even the enforcer in crimson softened, shame heavy in her expression. But the board chair? Emotion never touched her face. Not an inch. Your wife shouldn't have been on the community sidewalk without clearance, she snapped. Something inside me broke clean in half. She was walking, I said quietly, because we were told exercise helps stabilize her blood pressure. The officer of rules blinked rapidly. The clipboard queen pressed her fingers to her lips. The enforcer in crimson whispered something I couldn't hear. My brother took a step forward. You knew she was high risk? We know everything about our members, Marjorie said without shame. It's our job. That sentence was the spark that turned my discovery into a mission, because now the stakes weren't just legal. They were life or death if this continued. I looked toward Lena's house. The blinds shifted. Someone was standing just behind them. She'd heard everything. She was listening now. My brother leaned closer to whisper, "We need to secure the footage now, before she tries to erase anything." He was right. Footage wasn't just proof, it was leverage. But before we could move, the clipboard queen finally broke. Her voice trembled. I didn't want to file it, the report, the note. I only typed it because she told me, enough. The two syllables lashed out like a whip from the board chair. The clipboard queen flinched so hard she stepped backward into the officer of rules, who grabbed her arm to steady her. The enforcer in crimson inhaled sharply but didn't speak. It was unraveling, piece by piece, person by person, and Marjorie Keaton saw it. You're all employees of this board, she snapped. Act like it. No, I said. They're witnesses now. Silence. A deep, electric silence. My brother nodded once, confirming everything I already knew. This wasn't just going to end with a complaint, or a warning, or a lawsuit. This was turning into a criminal matter, one that she couldn't control with paperwork or intimidation. The board chair pointed at me as if commanding the universe to obey. You will not involve outside authorities. Marjorie, I said gently, you already did. Her eyes widened. For the first time, she understood she'd gone too far. We're securing the footage, my brother said firmly. Right now. The clipboard queen lowered her eyes. The officer of rules stepped aside. The enforcer in crimson didn't even try to stop us. But the tyrant in heels whispered, almost defeated, "This won't end how she thinks." She was right. This was no longer her story. It was mine. And I was done being quiet. It starts with the one person who'd been holding her breath since the moment this nightmare began. The conflicted witness. The woman Marjorie never expected to break rank. Lena. She stepped out onto her porch the second we turned toward my house. Her hands trembled, gripping the railing like she was trying to stop herself from shaking apart. Her uncertainty wasn't subtle. Her shoulders hunched. Her eyes darted between us and the HOA board like she was measuring danger in real time. And Marjorie Keaton noticed. The board chair snapped her head toward Lena, eyes narrowing. "Go back inside," she barked. "This doesn't concern you." But Lena didn't move. Her breath hitched, chest rising like she was pushing back tears she'd been holding in all night. "It does concern her," my brother said softly. She saw the shove. The clipboard queen gasped. The officer of rules closed her eyes. The enforcer in crimson looked at Marjorie, fear flickering over her features. Even the tyrant in heels took a half step away, as if Lena's truth was radioactive. But Marjorie Keaton didn't flinch. She doubled down like she always did. "You didn't see anything?" the board chair hissed. And if you value your standing in this community, Lena's voice cracked as she interrupted. I can't lie for you anymore. Those words hit the cul-de-sac like a sonic boom. The clipboard queen's knees nearly buckled. The enforcer in crimson whispered, "Oh, God." The officer of rules looked down at her shoes, ashamed. The tyrant in heels pressed a shaking hand to her mouth. But Marjorie? She looked at Lena like betrayal was a physical knife. "You agreed to support the board," she snapped. "You signed the oath." "I signed up to help neighbors," Lena said, hugging her arms. "Not hurt them." Her voice wavered, but the conviction behind it didn't break. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just her confession. It was the first domino. My brother nodded toward her. "Lena, go ahead. Tell us." Her eyes slid to me, guilt so heavy it seemed to bend her posture. "Grant, I saw everything yesterday. I was walking my dog. Your wife wasn't in anyone's way. She wasn't loud. She wasn't causing a disturbance." She swallowed hard. Her hands trembled harder. "And then Marjorie's son came out," she whispered. "He started shouting about restricted access. He shoved past me and he pushed her." The clipboard queen let out a tiny sob. The enforcer in crimson looked like she might throw up. The tyrant in heels shook her head in disbelief. "But the board chair?" Her voice sliced the air clean in half. "You are making a mistake." Lena flinched. Her entire body folded inward. That's when I stepped forward. "Hey," I said quietly. "Look at me." She did. Slowly, carefully, like she expected someone to snatch the truth back out of her mouth. "You're doing the right thing," I told her. "You were there. You know what happened, and you're brave enough to say it." A tear slid down her cheek. Behind us, my brother murmured, "This is enough for a full battery investigation and witness intimidation." That made the clipboard queen gasp again. The officer of rules looked like she'd seen lightning hit the ground. The enforcer in crimson nearly backed into a mailbox. The board chair glared at all of them, especially Lena. "I built this community," Marjorie hissed. "No," Lena whispered. "You controlled it." The tyrant in heels exhaled sharply. "She's right," she said under her breath. Marjorie's eyes snapped toward her, betrayal flashing. But Lena wasn't done. "There's something else," she whispered, looking at me. I didn't want to say it, but Marjorie's son wasn't acting alone. He was following instructions. My breath caught. "Whose instructions?" my brother asked. Lena pointed at the board chair with a trembling hand. "Her." I heard her. She told him to handle the sidewalk situation before the inspection. She said your wife made the neighborhood look unstable. Every word hit like a hammer. The clipboard queen sobbed openly now. The enforcer in crimson whispered a prayer under her breath. The officer of rules stepped away from Marjorie entirely. The tyrant in heels backed up 2 full steps. And Marjorie Keaton? She turned pale, so pale. She looked almost hollow. "You don't understand what you're doing," she whispered to Lena. But Lena finally straightened her back. "I do," she said. "I'm choosing the truth." My brother nodded firmly. "This is now an active criminal matter." Marjorie's mask shattered. Completely. She opened her mouth to argue, but there was no argument left to stand on. Because her own witness, her own neighbor, her own follower, had just exposed everything. And this time, there was no covering it up. The second Lena pointed at Marjorie Keaton, the world around us stopped feeling like a neighborhood dispute and started feeling like a courtroom waiting to happen. Even the breeze seemed to retreat, like the air itself didn't want to interfere. My brother stepped forward, voice steady. "Grant, we need to secure the footage and preserve every witness statement before she tries to erase any trace of this." And when he said she, every pair of eyes snapped toward the board chair. Marjorie Keaton looked nothing like the woman who'd strutted down the sidewalk earlier. Her authority was slipping through her hands, and she felt it. Her jaw twitched, her breath came shallow, and for the first time all day, fear flickered behind her outrage. The clipboard queen lifted a trembling hand. Should I help gather statements?" The officer of rules shot her a warning glance, but the enforcer in crimson whispered, "We can't lie for her anymore." The tyrant in heels shook her head in disbelief. "We're all complicit if we stay quiet." Their murmurs weren't quiet. They weren't loyal. They weren't afraid of me anymore. They were afraid of her. That's when I understood something. They weren't villains. They were captives. Marjorie had ruled them through fear for years, but now they were defecting, slowly, visibly, one by one. I turned toward Lena. Thank you. What you did, it matters more than you know. She nodded through tears. I just want things to go back to being safe. They will, my brother said. But we need to protect the evidence before Marjorie or her son tries anything. That's when the board chair finally snapped back to life. You're all acting like I committed a crime, she said sharply. He's a teenager. She overreacted. This is not a law enforcement matter. It's battery, my brother said. You instructed him. That's conspiracy. Every board member flinched. The clipboard queen seemed ready to faint. The officer of rules whispered, No, no. What have we done? The enforcer in crimson pressed her hand over her mouth. But Marjorie, she sneered. You're reaching. None of this will hold up. It will once the footage is reviewed, I said. Her eyes flickered. That was the tell. She knew the footage was damning, and that's when my own strategy crystallized. I hadn't planned on using my professional skills like this, but she forced my hand. Years of risk assessment, years of analyzing liability, years of understanding how insurance companies crumble under evidence. Property values, legal exposure, negligence, liability stacking. This wasn't just a scandal. It was financial devastation waiting to happen for her. The clipboard queen looked at me, voice trembling. Grant, is it true? Could the HOA be held responsible for her injuries? Yes, I said. If the footage proves your president acted with negligence or intent, the insurance carrier will pursue damages. And if a false violation was pre-filed? I lifted the note. That's fraud. The officer of rules dropped her pen. The enforcer in crimson whispered, Oh God, she's ruined us. And the tyrant in heels spoke the words that made Marjorie freeze. If this goes public, the HOA won't survive the financial fallout. The board chair rounded on her. You don't know what you're talking about. But I stepped forward. I do. Her glare snapped to me, sharp and panicked. You stay out of board finances? That's the thing, I said. I understand board finances better than you think. Her eyes widened. She'd forgotten my occupation. This is going to trigger a liability investigation, I said. Insurance audit, risk review, every decision you've made will be examined. Her breath hitched. It was the first real crack of terror, not anger, in her expression. She tried to recover. You're threatening the HOA. No, I said. You're destroying it. I'm just pointing out the consequences. The clipboard queen stepped toward me. What do we need to do? Loyalty, transferred, just like that. We need every witness statement, my brother said, and Grant needs access to the footage system. The enforcer in crimson nodded quickly. I can unlock the equipment room. You will not, the board chair snapped, but she was shouting into the wind. The board wasn't hers anymore. The tyrant in heels backed away from her. The officer of rules crossed her arms. The clipboard queen lowered her eyes and whispered, We're done protecting you. Marjorie's face drained, completely, and that was the moment she realized. Her power didn't collapse. It evaporated. Because the truth wasn't hers to control anymore. It belonged to all of us. The enforcer in crimson held the key in a trembling hand, glancing back at me and my brother as if expecting Marjorie to strike lightning down on her for daring to cooperate. It's this one, she whispered. The small building sat at the end of the cul-de-sac. Plain beige siding, a single window, and a keypad Marjorie believed made her untouchable. Ironically, it would be the place where her control died. As we approached, the officer of rules lingered near the flower bed, arms crossed tight over her chest, like she needed to hold herself together. The clipboard queen stood a few steps back, wringing her hands and refusing to meet Marjorie Keaton's eyes. The tyrant in heels kept glancing toward the street, as if waiting for any sign of her president's next explosion. And the board chair? She stood rooted in the center of the sidewalk, fury vibrating through her posture. You have no authority to access internal surveillance, Marjorie barked. This is a violation of HOA protections. My brother didn't slow his steps. This isn't HOA business anymore. This is criminal evidence. You can't classify it that way, she snapped. You already did, I said, when you tried to bury it. The clipboard queen flinched like the words physically hit her. The enforcer in crimson hesitated only a moment before sliding the key into the lock. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice cracking. I can't lie for you anymore. The board chair's face twisted, something between betrayal and pure venom. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. No, the enforcer said softly. I'm preventing one. Inside, the equipment room hummed with low electrical buzz. Monitors, drives, backup hubs, everything Marjorie thought she controlled. I stepped toward the main console, my risk management instincts kicking in. Years spent analyzing digital liability, surveillance chains, retention protocols, all of it clicked into place like gears in a machine. My brother watched the door, hand near his belt out of habit, scanning for threat. The clipboard queen finally entered behind us. The footage system auto-syncs, she whispered. It can't be deleted without leaving a trace. My eyes met hers. Finally, solid ground. That's exactly what we need. Behind us, the tyrant in heels hovered nervously. Is it bad? The footage? You saw it, the enforcer murmured. The officer of rules shook her head. We didn't just break rules, we broke trust. Their voices cracked in a chorus of regret. But Marjorie? She pushed into the doorway like a storm. You do not touch that system, she shouted. That footage is HOA property, protected by... Stop, I said, turning to her. You know what's on that camera. You know what it shows. No footage shows intent, she spat. The clipboard queen's voice came out tiny. But the audio does. That silenced the room. I hadn't even considered audio. HOA surveillance rarely kept sound, but the way the tyrant in heels swallowed and looked away told me enough. It caught Marjorie's orders, her voice, her instructions to her son, her plan. A slow dread crawled across her features. She had realized too late that the board she manipulated for years had never actually understood the system as well as the people she underestimated. I reached for the console. Once I export this, it's preserved, immutable. You can't spin it, bury it, or bully anyone out of it. You wouldn't dare, she hissed. I already am. My brother nodded. This will go directly to the sheriff's department and the district attorney. The officer of rules leaned heavily against the wall, like her legs couldn't hold her. We're finished, she whispered. The clipboard queen began crying quietly. The tyrant in heels murmured, the insurance audit alone will kill the HOA. And the enforcer in crimson whispered the truth everyone felt. She destroyed all of us. The export finished, the light blinked, the drive clicked, and with that, Marjorie Keaton's empire cracked beyond repair. She lunged toward me, voice snapping like a live wire. Give that to me! My brother stepped between us. Touch him, and you add assault to the charges. The board chair froze, for the first time, truly cornered. This isn't over, she whispered, but the clipboard queen corrected her, voice trembling but firm. It is, Marjorie. It ended the moment you touched his wife. With the small hard drive in my hand, carrying the weight of every lie she'd built her authority on. It wasn't evidence anymore. It was a countdown. As we stepped out of the equipment room, the late afternoon sun hit us like a spotlight. The cul-de-sac was silent, heavy with anticipation. Every board member stood in a loose, broken semicircle, like soldiers who'd realized they'd been following the wrong general all along. And Marjorie Keaton stood in the center of them, shaking with rage she could barely contain. You think this changes anything? She snapped, voice cracking. You think you can undermine the board with one drive? The clipboard queen inhaled shakily. It's over, Marjorie. Please just stop talking. The board chair turned slowly, eyes narrowing at her as if betrayal was a physical wound. You, she whispered. I made you. You wouldn't even be on this board if I didn't do everything you told me to, the clipboard queen whispered. Yes, I know. The enforcer in crimson stepped forward next. We followed your orders, even when they felt wrong. That's on us. But this? She pointed toward the equipment room. This is on you. Marjorie's face twisted. You're all cowards. No, I said. They're finally free. That made the tyrant in heels flinch like she'd been struck. The officer of rules looked away, jaw tight with guilt. My brother stood beside me like a sentinel. Grant, The next step is securing statements from all witnesses before the meeting tonight. Meeting. That word snapped every head toward him. Because tonight, whether Marjorie wanted it or not, there was a scheduled HOA board gathering, and for the first time ever, it wouldn't be another session of her dictating rules. Tonight, the community would see the truth. Marjorie's eyes went wide. You can't present that footage. It's confidential. Not when it documents a crime, my brother said simply. The officer of rules swallowed hard. If the footage is shown, the members will demand a vote. A vote for what? The tyrant in heels whispered. My answer was quiet, steady, final. A vote to remove her. Marjorie's entire posture snapped like a tree trunk in a storm. You wouldn't dare. I held up the drive. I already did. The clipboard queen whispered, the bylaws allow an emergency vote. With a 2/3 majority, the president can be suspended pending investigation. And, I added, with criminal evidence verified, the sheriff's department takes jurisdiction. Marjorie lunged toward the clipboard queen. You absolute imbecile! Stop talking! But the enforcer in crimson grabbed her arm before she could get close. Don't touch her, she warned. Not again, not ever. The board chair jerked away, spinning toward the rest of the board. You're all finished if you let this happen. You think the community will trust you after this? You think any of you will hold positions once they see how weak you are? We're not weak, the tyrant in heels said, voice trembling but clear. We're just not your hostages anymore. For a moment, Marjorie looked truly stunned, like the idea of losing her hold over them was more unthinkable than any legal consequence. My brother spoke next. Grant, we need to prepare the presentation. Witness statements, explicit timeline, footage cued. I nodded, my chest tightened, not with fear, but with a focused determination I hadn't felt since Emily's first fall. Let's get to work. We walked toward my house, the board trailing behind, each step a fracture in Marjorie's power, and she knew it, which is why she followed us, desperate, breathless, unraveling as she tried to salvage the authority slipping through her hands. You can't show that footage, she screamed. I am this community. My brother turned around slowly. No, you're what broke it. The clipboard queen rushed to my side. Grant, I brought the violation logs, the ones she forced us to pre-fill. They'll prove the pattern. The officer of rules nodded, voice thin. I'll testify. I should have done it months ago. The enforcer in crimson exhaled. I'll stand before the community too. The tyrant in heels whispered, people need to know the truth. One by one, every woman she ruled stepped onto my side. And Marjorie Keaton. She stared at us like a queen watching her crown fall into the dirt. This isn't happening, she whispered. But it was. Tonight wasn't just a meeting. It was judgment. And for the first time since she'd seized this neighborhood, the board chair would answer to the people she'd crushed. The footage was ready. The witnesses were ready. The community was waiting. And the truth was coming, whether she screamed or begged. The moment the sun dropped behind, the houses and the clubhouse lights flickered on, casting long shadows across rows of folding chairs, trembling neighbors, and a presidency about to collapse under its own weight. The HOA clubhouse had never felt this crowded. People filled every seat, every wall, every inch of the standing area near the door. Whispers swirled like storm birds. The tension was thick enough to taste, but nothing in that room drew attention like Marjorie Keaton. She stood rigid at the front of the hall, arms crossed, eyes cold, lips pressed so tight they were almost white. The board surrounded her, but not in support anymore. The clipboard queen kept her distance. The officer of rules clutched a folder like a lifeline. The enforcer in crimson stood stiffly by the projector table, and the tyrant in heels looked anywhere but her president's face. When my brother and I walked in, conversations cracked like glass. Everyone knew something was coming. No one knew how explosive it would be. The board chair tried to recover her dominance. She slammed her gavel once. This emergency meeting is called to order. The first matter? No, the enforcer in crimson interrupted, voice steady but strained. The first matter is the footage. A gasp rippled through the room. Marjorie's head snapped toward her so fast the entire board jolted. You do not speak out of turn. Sit down. But the enforcer didn't move, not an inch. Marjorie, she said quietly, it's done. We all agreed. We did not agree. the board chair thundered. The clipboard queen raised her trembling hand. "We agreed," she whispered. "You just didn't listen." The officer of rules nodded, though her chin quivered. "The community deserves to see what happened." The tyrant in heels exhaled shakily. "For once, we have to stop protecting the wrong person." And just like that, the entire room turned toward me. My brother stepped forward. "We have audio and video evidence relevant to battery, negligence, and intent to conceal." Chaos erupted. A dozen voices rose. People demanded explanations. Others begged for order. Some pointed angrily at the board chair. Marjorie slammed her gavel again. "Silence!" The room quieted reluctantly. "This is a smear campaign," she shouted. "A manipulative stunt invented by a homeowner who refuses to follow community guidelines." My blood boiled, but before I could speak, my brother raised a hand. "The evidence will speak for itself." The projector clicked on. The enforcer in crimson loaded the drive with shaking fingers. And then, the screen lit up. Whispers died instantly. The footage played. We watched Emily walking peacefully along the sidewalk, her hand on her stomach, breathing slow and steady. Then Marjorie's son appeared on screen, charging, yelling something inaudible at first. And then, the push. My wife's body jolting backward, her cry, the fall. The room erupted again, but louder, rawer, angrier. Someone shouted, "Is she okay?" Another yelled, "That kid should be arrested." Someone near the front muttered, "What kind of monsters run this board?" But the worst part wasn't the shove. It was the audio. Clear as daylight, Marjorie's voice floated through the speakers. "Handle the sidewalk situation before the inspection. Don't let her make the neighborhood look unstable." The clipboard queen covered her face with both hands. The officer of rules burst into tears. The tyrant in heels whispered, "Oh my God." The enforcer in crimson looked physically sick. The footage continued, capturing the board chair's voice again. "If we need a violation ready, prep it early." Silence. The kind of silence that carries judgment. Then the room exploded. "That's fraud! She put a pregnant woman in danger. She covered it up. She needs to go. Call the cops." The chaos swelled until Marjorie tried to shout over it. "This is all taken out of context," she screamed. "You people have no idea how to run a community." "Neither do you," I said, stepping forward. Every eye snapped toward us. "You planned to accuse her before anything happened. You instructed your son. You tried to bury the evidence. You endangered my wife and my unborn baby." The board chair shook, her face drained of all color. "That's not true," she insisted. "He misunderstood me. The footage is manipulated. It's a trick." But the enforcer in crimson spoke softly, brokenly. "No, Marjorie, it's exactly what you told him." And then Lena, the conflicted witness, stood up from the back row. Her voice echoed across the hall. "I heard her say it," she said. "I saw everything." That was the moment the community turned from outrage to judgment. A neighbor rose. "I motioned to suspend Marjorie Keaton as HOA president immediately." A second neighbor stood. "I second." Hands shot up across the room. Dozens, then more, then nearly everyone. The clipboard queen whispered, "Unanimous?" My brother nodded once. "It's official." And the board chair, the tyrant in heels, the enforcer in crimson, the officer of rules, all turned toward Marjorie Keaton, who finally understood she had nothing left to stand on. The board chair's expression collapsed into something raw and unfamiliar, a person realizing the world she controlled no longer existed. The clubhouse lights hummed above us. Neighbors whispered, angry and stunned. The clipboard queen wiped her eyes. The officer of rules held her trembling hands against her chest. The tyrant in heels leaned against the wall as if her legs couldn't hold her. And the enforcer in crimson kept staring at the floor, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Marjorie didn't lash out this time. She didn't shout. She didn't demand. She just whispered, "You can't do this to me." But the community already had. The newly empowered vice president, shaking but resolute, read from the bylaws. "Effective immediately per Article 7, Section C, Marjorie Keaton is suspended pending criminal review." The words landed like a final verdict. My brother stepped forward, voice formal. "Sheriff's deputies will arrive shortly to take statements and review the footage. Will remain until they begin processing." Then he turned to her. "Marjorie, do not leave the premises." Her jaw tightened. "Are you arresting me?" "That's not my call," he replied. "But based on what we've seen, it's likely." The clipboard queen sobbed again, louder this time. The officer of rules whispered, "How did it ever get this far?" But the enforcer in crimson said what everyone else was too afraid to say aloud. "She made it get this far." And Marjorie finally cracked. "You all followed me," she screamed. "Every one of you. Don't pretend you didn't benefit from my leadership." "No," I said quietly. "They survived it. There's a difference." The room froze. Even Marjorie flinched. Emily stepped in from the back then, slowly, carefully, escorted by two neighbors who refused to let her walk alone. Her eyes were tired, swollen from tears, but strong in a way only someone who has been hurt and risen anyway can be. The entire room shifted when they saw her. The clipboard queen covered her mouth. The tyrant in heels looked away, ashamed. The officer of rules whispered, "Oh God." The enforcer in crimson lowered her head. And Marjorie? She looked at my wife like she was the reason any of this happened. Emily spoke first. "You push me with your policies," she said. "Your son did it with his hands, but you taught him the violence." The board chair didn't respond. She couldn't. My wife continued, voice steady. "I'm due in 3 weeks. If I had landed wrong, if I had fallen on my stomach." She paused, breath trembling. "You didn't care." The whole room understood the weight of those words. And that's when the sirens approached outside. Red and blue lights danced over the clubhouse windows. The whispers stopped. The air tightened. A deputy stepped inside, nodding at my brother. "We have the footage and statements incoming," he said. "Is the subject present?" Every eye turned to the board chair. Marjorie's lips trembled. "I'm not going anywhere. I know my rights." "You'll have every chance to exercise them," the deputy replied calmly. "But tonight, you're answering questions." When he escorted her out, neighbors stepped aside like water parting around a sinking ship. No cheers, no celebration, just a heavy collective release. The clipboard queen collapsed into a chair. The officer of rules hugged herself, whispering apologies. The tyrant in heels slid down the wall, crying silently. The enforcer in crimson stared at her hands as if seeing them differently for the first time in years. And Lena, the witness who changed everything, walked toward Emily and hugged her tightly. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have spoken sooner." Emily hugged her back. "You spoke when it mattered." The clubhouse slowly emptied, neighbors touching my shoulder, offering support, apologizing for what we endured. And when the last car pulled away, leaving only the soft glow of porch lights across the cul-de-sac, I finally let myself breathe. My brother placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did everything right," he said. "You protected your family. You stood up. You stayed calm. And justice followed." I nodded, looking toward my home, my wife leaning against the doorway, hand on her stomach, safe tonight because the truth won. And as the quiet settled, I finally spoke to the viewer who stayed through this entire journey. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. We walked inside as the night wrapped around us like a long overdue peace. The truth had set this neighborhood free, and tomorrow we'd start rebuilding what fear had broken.